Political upheaval. Palestinian Prime Minister Salam Fayyad dissolves his cabinet in an emergency meeting. Bilateral ties. Turkish President Abdullah Gül arrives in Iran to meet his counterpart Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and improve ties. Rapid growth. Japan confirms that China's economy surpassed its own as the world's second largest economy in 2010. And looking for love. As couples enjoy Valentine's Day together, many singles hope to end their lonely days by soon finding a partner. Hello and welcome to CCTV News. I'm Chang Ji-yoon in Beijing. Palestinian Prime Minister Salam Fayyad has dissolved his cabinet in an emergency meeting. Analysts say the departure appears to be a gesture inspired by the unrest rocking the Arab world, although the Palestinian National Authority doesn't agree. Nick Jones has more.
Palestinian National Authority President Mahmoud Abbas accepted his Prime Minister's resignation on Monday and asked him to form a new government. Fayyad now has 6 weeks to name a new cabinet. The official Wafa news agency said the move was intended to prepare for general elections planned in September. Palestinian National Authority's Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki had this to say.
Well, the resignation of the cabinet has nothing to do with the situation in Egypt or anywhere in the Arab world. It has to do with our readiness to prepare for elections. Local government elections, presidential and...
But Hamas rejected that call, saying it will not take part in the ballot nor recognise its results.
The decision to appoint Fayyad to form a new government is an illegitimate decision and we reject it. Palestinian law and all the laws worldwide force any government to be presented to the Legislative Council to obtain sanction. But since this did not happen, this is an illegitimate procedure and a preemptive step to prevent the opportunity for any movement in the Palestinian streets, similar to what happened in Tunisia and Egypt.
Analyst Hani El-Masri said that the Palestinian leadership is employing the same old policies under new conditions.
It is obvious that the Palestinian leadership is taking measures to soften the outcome of the revolutions in Egypt and Tunisia with regard to the Palestinian situation. But until now, the steps that have been taken are similar to past policies and methods. But now there is a new situation that is completely different. That must be dealt with differently in terms of policies, methods, and the people.
Meanwhile, the Palestinian chief peace negotiator, Saeb Erekat, has also resigned in response to the leaks broadcast by the Al Jazeera satellite channel. They've detailed far-reaching concessions that his government was prepared to make to Israel to form a future Palestinian state. Erekat, a member of the Palestinian Legislative Council and head of the Palestinian Liberation Organization's Negotiations Affairs Department, was born in Jericho in 1955. He has been involved for years in Israeli-Palestinian negotiations and peace agreements. Nick Jones, CCTV.
Egypt's ruling military council has just issued communique number 5, calling on labor leaders to stop strikes and protests to allow a sense of normalcy to return to the country. 3 days after President Hosni Mubarak's resignation, Egypt's generals are attempting to get the country back to work. Trey Nguyen has a story.
About 40 Egyptian protesters who have held out in Cairo's Tahrir Square were cordoned off by military police and soldiers on Monday. They said they had been told by the army to leave or face arrest. Activists said 2 protesters had been detained. This comes as the country's ruling force, Military Council, said it will act against chaos and disorder. Inside the Cabinet Hall, gone is the picture of former President Hosni Mubarak. Egypt's Prime Minister Ahmed Shafik, who was appointed by Mubarak days before stepping down, also said the goal now is security.
You people who are stopping the trains, you who are doing these things, you are wrong. And with all authority, because I say these are the right things to do and these are the wrong things to do in a very clear way. And I'll hold them accountable, those who harm the country.
Many people in Egypt are seeking to continue the momentum of the protests, to gain better pay and working conditions. On Sunday, the Higher Military Council suspended the constitution and dissolved parliament. It says it will remain in power for 6 months, or until free and fair elections are held under a revised constitution. The cabinet appointed by Mubarak is to stay in office, but all legislation will be submitted to army chiefs for approval. The army has won the hearts of the people by refusing to join police against demonstrators during the uprising. Meanwhile, Switzerland has frozen whatever assets Hosni Mubarak and his associates may have there. But experts say hunting for Mubarak's purported hidden wealth of $70 billion, let alone recovering it, will be an enormous task. Suriname, CCTV.
Earlier, the head of Egypt's Al-Ghad opposition party announced his agenda and candidacy for the election. Ayman Noor is a former presidential candidate who challenged Hosni Mubarak in 2005. Now moving on, the changes in Egypt have prompted a wide range of reactions from Iraq. Politicians say the changes are unique and represent the desires of the Egyptian people, while Iraqi people wish their brothers in Egypt a better future. Baki Naji reports.
A few days after the resignation of Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak, reactions from different circles in Iraq are aggravated. The politicians view the Egyptian revolution as a historical event because it toppled a dominant president which was in power for over 30 years.
The revolution in Egypt reflects the big gap between the ideas of the former Egyptian regime and the ambitions of the Egyptian people. I think this will be a classic example for all the Arab regimes which have started to join the train of change.
Observers of the interior Iraqi affairs expressed their support for the Egyptian experience. They also explained that the retreat of the Egyptian president is something superficial, and the Egyptian people must build a democratic regime based on peaceful alternation.
We must assure that the case in Egypt did not come from nothing, but it came from various circles of the Egyptian people, political parties and NGOs. Therefore, the Egyptian masses made the event and changed the political process in the country.
The Iraqi people congratulated the Egyptian demonstrators for the great achievement towards a promising future for Egypt and its people.
We hope that all the Arab countries follow the same way of Egypt, where the demonstrations were peaceful without carrying weapons or troubles. 30 years were enough for that regime. We congratulate the Egyptian people, and if God will, they will get a government tackles their problems.
Meanwhile, in Iraq, the stiffened security measures in Baghdad and other cities may trigger similar demonstration that demands the change of the government. A few days ago, a group of young Iraqis started to circulate online an invitation to a big demonstration demanding for political reform. Now, after weeks of strikes of different demands in Iraq, will the Iraqi government comply with the demands of the Iraqi people? Baki Naqid, CCTV, Baghdad.
In other news, protests in Yemen have entered their 4th day. The demonstrators want political reforms and to see the back of the country's president. University students, rights activists, and lawmakers marched through the capital, Sana'a. Lawmakers in black robes, led by their union chief, joined demonstrators and shouted slogans against security forces. They have been chanting for the government to step down. Similar demonstrations have taken place in Aden and Taz. Yemen is one of several countries in the Middle East, reverberating to the pro-reform uprisings in Egypt and Tunisia. Chad's first parliamentary election in 8 years went ahead smoothly on Sunday. Observers said the poll will test incumbent President Idriss Deby, who has held power for 20 years. Past attempts to stage elections have failed because of the insecurity in the country. The vote comes days before Deby is expected to stand for re-election in April. A European Union observer mission says observers have not seen any irregularities aimed at fraud, but many voting stations open late later than scheduled. The vote pits the Bee's ruling Patriotic Salvation Movement against candidates from the main opposition coalition CPDC, or the Coordination of Political Parties for the Defense of the Constitution. Preliminary results could take several days to be published. Japan's ruling Democratic Party has proposed suspending the party membership of former leader Ichiro Ozawa over a funding scandal, a move that risks deepening divisions in the party. This is just days after the political veteran refused to voluntarily leave the party, as suggested by Prime Minister Naoto Kan. The proposal comes at a crucial time for the Prime Minister, who is struggling to pass bills to implement the 92 trillion yen, or $1 trillion budget for the fiscal year from April 1st through a divided parliament. Officials in the ruling Democratic Party of Japan have proposed suspending Ozawa's membership until his trial in the funding scandal ends. Coming up on CCTV News. Bilateral ties. Turkish President Abdullah Gül arrives in Iran to meet his counterpart Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and improve ties. And rapid growth. Japan confirms that China's economy surpassed its own as the world's second largest economy in 2010. Turkish President Abdullah Gül has touched down in Iran and has been welcomed by his counterpart Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. It's the first time in 9 years that a Turkish president has visited Tehran. Gül arrived in the Iranian capital heading a 260-member delegation of businessmen to boost bilateral ties. The two sides have repeatedly vowed to triple trade to about $30 billion over the next 5 years. Gül said that his visit would further improve relations with Iran and contribute to efforts to ensure peace, tranquility, and stability in the region. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad called the last round of nuclear talks with the world powers in Istanbul a success and thanked Turkey for hosting the talks. After days of tension and small gun battles, relative quiet has returned to the troubled border between Thailand and Cambodia. But troops from the two countries are still on high alert. There were many clashes in the disputed area near Previer Temple at the beginning of this month. Scars from the violence remain at the historic building where many unexploded shrapnels could be spotted. The dispute centers on ownership of an 11th century Hindu temple on Dan Grek Mountains, which straddle the border between Thailand and Cambodia. During different periods, it has been located in both Cambodia and Thailand. A suicide bomber has blown himself up at the entrance of a bustling hotel complex in Kabul, killing 2 people. It is the second attack in less than 3 weeks to hit the heavily guarded Afghan capital. The blast destroyed the entrance to the building and blew out windows. It is the first bombing in the capital since late January, when a suicide attacker blew himself up at an upscale Kabul supermarket, killing 8 people. Now, Hong Kong's coroner's court has began a hearing into the deaths of 8 of its residents killed during last year's Manila bus hijacking. Although an earlier investigation by the Philippines found the hostage taker had shot and killed all 8 victims, the Hong Kong inquest will consider all the evidence again. It'll focus on whether friendly fire contributed to any of the deaths. However, Philippines media has reported that senior police officers, local officials who handled the crisis, the negotiator, and the bus driver have declined to take part in the inquest. 32 Hong Kong residents, including survivors, families of the hostages, and staff of the tour operator, will, however, testify. On August 23rd last year, a gunman identified as ex-police captain Rolando Mendoza held 15 tourists hostage in Manila. The 11-hour standoff ended in a tragedy. Japan has confirmed that China's economy surpassed its own as the world's second largest economy in 2010. It also says a late year last downturn was the first quarterly contradiction in more than a year. Nick Jones has the details.
Japan's economy expanded 3.9% in the calendar year in the first annual growth in 3 years, but it was not enough to hold off a surging China. The Cabinet Office says Japan's nominal GDP last year came to nearly $5.5 trillion, less than China's total of nearly $5.9 trillion. Experts in Japan say the figures could actually have a positive effect on the Japanese economy.
Probably this should be viewed more positively from the viewpoint Japanese, because probably Chinese people would begin to consume more high-end durable goods such as automobiles. And probably China would become a very good market for Japan. So actually, from my viewpoint, the fact that China becomes the second largest country in the world means that probably China enters a phase that China could be a very important market for Japan.
China was acknowledged last year as having surpassed Japan as the world's second largest economy. However, China remains poor with GDP per capita compared with that of Japan.